Coming up on Network Africa, pirates hijack oil tanker, capture 16 crew members in the Gulf of Guinea. Kenyan Member of Parliament Kulu Hassan dies in hospital after a hit-and-run motorcycle crash. And Lesotho MPs to discuss reclaiming significant parts of South Africa under United Nations resolution. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. We begin off the coast of Congo-Brazzaville, where a Danish tanker flying the Liberian flag was attacked by pirates in the Gulf of Guinea, and contact was lost for 3 days with a crew of 16 sailors. According to the ship owner, during this attack, which took place on Saturday evening, pirates were able to board the Monjasa Reformer, and the entire crew put themselves in security in the Citadel, the armored refuge of the ship. According to the Congolese authorities, 3 men attacked the boat, which was in the area, to supply ships with fuel. There has been no communication with sailors since then. A Kenyan lawmaker has died while receiving treatment at a hospital after being involved in a hit-and-run motorcycle accident in the capital, Nairobi. Kulu Hassan was a second-term MP for Banisa constituency in northeastern Kenya. His family told local outlets that the MP was hit by a speedy motorcycle rider and was pronounced dead last night. Lawmakers have been paying tributes to their colleague on social media. Majority Leader in Parliament, Kimani Ichung'wah, said Mail was a dedicated and committed public servant. Staying in Kenya, President William Ruto has promised to deal with all those involved in criminal activity during Monday's protests in the capital, Nairobi. During a news conference with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin, he said there were no exceptions on respect for the rule of law or protection of property or lives. His remarks came after clashes broke out during the second week of protests against the government and high food prices, with 1 person shot dead in the western city of Kisumu. The clashes broke out as opposition leader Raila Odinga's convoy passed through the Kawangware neighborhood in Nairobi.
I want to tell you that we have no exceptions on respect for the rule of law. And we also don't have exceptions on protection of property or lives. Everybody must respect the rule of law, and everybody is entitled to the protection of their property and of their assets and of their lives by the government of Kenya. It is unthinkable for any government to participate in the destruction of property of citizens. I want to tell you, as I tell Kenyans and members of the global community, that the government of Kenya will make sure that the property and lives of all Kenyans, including our visitors, will be protected, and those involved in criminal activity, including the invasions, will be brought to book. And we've agreed that EU, under the leadership of Germany, will support our efforts in stabilizing our region. And I have also made a commitment that as a country, we are signatories to the UN Charter, and the respect for territorial integrity of countries is a cardinal principle of our beliefs, both as a country and as a region. And any aggression anywhere is actually aggression everywhere. And we are very strong believers that the war in Europe should be brought to an end, and the aggression against Ukraine is unjustified in any way. Let me also put it on record that Kenya has been pushing for the last 10 years variable geometry on the application of the EPAs. And I now can confirm with the support of Germany that tomorrow we will be having the final meeting in Brussels, where Kenya finally will be able to sign the economic partnership agreement between Kenya and Europe to allow us opportunity to export our valuable products into the European market. And that will serve as an interim agreement as we wait for the rest of the members of the East African community to prepare themselves, and so that we can all sign the agreement together later.
Meanwhile, residents living in the Kibera settlement in Nairobi are still counting their losses after the anti-government protests. In this next report, a survey of the area shows the damage to homes and businesses caused by the rampaging crowd.
Late on Monday night, a church and several nearby businesses were set ablaze in Kibera by unknown assailants. While the mosque was also damaged, the government and the opposition blame each other for the attacks. Police fired tear gas and water cannons at stone-throwing supporters of opposition leader Raila Odinga on Monday during a second week of protests against the government and high food prices. Tire shop owner Joseph Maloba says the destruction of his shop will have a huge financial impact.
To me, it's a big loss. I've lost over 500,000. This is a very big loss. I don't know how I'll recover it. I don't know where I'll start from. I totally don't know what I'll do.
Kibera resident Keziah Awino says she does not think there was a direct connection between the protests and the destruction, as Odinga's supporters had protested in other areas of the city.
Clearly, all the damage and loss you see here cannot be because of the protests. There must be a hidden agenda. Whether we have to fight or protest, things must be very clear. Raila Odinga held demonstrations in Kawangware. Raila Odinga went to Mathare. Why is it that businesses in Kibera got razed? We don't know where to start after all the loss. Our children's school has been burnt down. Our churches too. We don't know where to go, considering the tough economic times.
Last night, Luos lost their businesses, they lost their garages. Nubians lost their businesses. Kisis were attacked. Kikuyus lost their kiosks. And all people of God suffered. And I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, how will we allow ourselves to be manipulated by politicians and by criminals?
We were not able to get them because we tried as from 6. We could get rumors that people want to get into the church, into damage, but we tried by all ways, by all means, but we could not get the authorities.
Odinga, who is seeking to channel frustrations about stubborn inflation into a durable movement against Ruto, says the protests will continue until the opposition's demands are met. Ruto has accused Odinga of trying to stir up chaos in a country with a history of political and ethnic violence, often around elections. Odinga denies this. The Kenya Private Sector Alliance says each day of the protests costs 3 billion Kenyan shillings. That's about $22.78 million.
The Lesotho Parliament is expected to discuss a motion today on the reclamation of some parts of South Africa. An opposition MP wants legislators to declare the whole of the Free State, parts of the Northern Cape, parts of the Eastern Cape, parts of Mpumalanga and parts of KwaZulu-Natal as part of Lesotho's territory. It says the reclamation will be pursued under the United Nations Resolution 1817 that was passed by the General Assembly in December 1962. Historically, Lesotho people were found in South Africa's Orange Free State, Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, Mpumalanga and parts of KwaZulu-Natal. But there were forced migration to present-day Lesotho during wars. Let's get more on this as we bring in our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty de Beer. Betty speaking to us online from Johannesburg in South Africa. Hello, Betty.
Hello, Joker. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So currently, where is Lesotho in reference to South Africa?
I don't know if the producer can share the map I shared with her. Lesotho is right inside South Africa. It's surrounded by South Africa. So the country on its own shares a number of provincial borders with it's within South Africa. Sotho is spoken inside South Africa, and people go across all the time. So they're referring to the resolution 1817 of 18th December 1962, where it had to do with the question of independence and generally tidying the affairs of a number of Southern African countries, Basutoland at the time, Basutoland, that's Lesotho now, Swaziland, which is Eswatini now, as well as Bechuanaland, which is Botswana. So in the case of Basutoland and these other countries, reference in that resolution was made regarding returning the land to them, taken by whatever pretext or whatever way it was taken to them, and that there was a mention in that resolution of the issue of South Africa or the South African government at the time threatening to annex, the parts of the land that supposedly belong to people of Basutoland or Lesotho. These are lands, or the land had been taken from them, or they left. They had to flee during some of the wars with the Dutch, the Guinea wars. Ngunis are like the Zulus and people found within South Africa, and they had to flee, led by King Moshoeshoe at that time. We're talking the 19th century. So they're taking this stance and referring to this. I don't know how it's going to go, but we're watching to see the outcome, what they're going to decide about it, because the person who brought it up, I think, is the only member of his party in that parliament. But we'll wait to see. South Africa is yet to comment. I know that the notice for this debate was given last month, in December. I think they decided, South Africa didn't comment at the time, and they decided to debate after the Christmas break. Now, in March, we're hearing that they're debating, but we'll wait to see the outcome of that debate. But it's going to be a very complicated issue to deal with.
Right. So what are relations like now between, South Africa and Lesotho? You say that the government has not, made any comments about this matter, but we can actually take a look at what their relationship has been like before now.
The relationship has been good. They cooperate they can't even avoid cooperating. They cooperate water-wise. You have a plateau in Lesotho through which South Africa gets some of its water sources. And Lesotho is within South Africa as well. And languages are shared. So they have a good relationship. And most of the time you have instability within Lesotho. You have South African mediators going as well. I know people always refer to the 1998 invasion, if you call it that, of the South African Defence Force during the instability in the country, political instability in the country, to calm things down. People talk about invasion, but then Nelson Mandela was the president, Mbeki was the deputy president, and both had to travel. The Home Affairs Minister at the time, Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, was the acting president. And of course, with Madiba's say-so, he deployed forces into Lesotho. But it wasn't an invasion to annex. It was to calm things down. And at some point, I think Botswana forces joined them as well. But generally, there's a good enough relationship. And the people of Lesotho cross on a day-to-day basis. As I said, languages are shared. And they even have a special visa dispensation where they're given long-term visas to go. But many actually come in without visas, because when you get to Free State, the Free State, you just cross you can cross into Lesotho. That's how it is, because if you look at that map, you see Lesotho, right within around Ladysmith is KwaZulu-Natal, Bloemfontein is the Free State, Umtata, Eastern Cape. So these are some of the places that they believe that the land belongs to them. The Free State as a whole, that's where you have the Supreme Court of Appeal of South Africa. They want that as part of, if this debate goes on. And some parts of the Northern Cape, some part of the Eastern Cape, some parts of the KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga as well. These are provinces in South Africa. And they're that close. Some people even refer to Lesotho as the 10th province of South Africa. There's a close enough relationship that they can avoid here.
So some have described this as a joke taken too far. Could you tell us more of what this means coming, in terms of regards to people from South Africa?
I wouldn't say it's a joke taken too far. People have a right. And in that resolution, the United Nations General Assembly talked about the rights of the people, people not being denied their rights to their homeland or the land that belongs to them. And if people feel wronged, I think they have a right. Whether they will get what they're agitating for is another matter entirely. But I guess they have a right to seek whatever it is they're seeking. It's how it's handled that matters at the end of the day.
Right. Thank you for shedding more light on this. Our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, speaking to us from Johannesburg.
Thank you.
And still ahead on the program. Just before departing Ghana, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris makes a case for women empowerment. Details in a moment. Please stay with us. Let's go now to Mozambique, where grave robbers have taken body parts of a dead albino man in western Mozambique after digging through concrete that was used to reinforce the grave. Police say the suspects are still at large after the incident in Mwatize district in Tete province. The deceased, who was about 50 years old, was recently buried in a village that borders Malawi. A campaigner for albino rights has condemned the robbery. He said the police had promised to do everything to arrest the suspects. People with albinism who lack pigment in their skin and appear pale are regularly killed for use in witchcraft in several African countries, including Malawi, Mozambique, and Tanzania. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has met visiting Zimbabwean Foreign Minister Frederick Shava in the capital Minsk. The two countries identified new areas in cooperation, including the humanitarian sphere, education, maternity and childhood care, and baby food. He said that Zimbabwean President Emerson Mnangagwa's wife would visit Belarus soon to deal with these issues. The Belarusian leader added that he was continuing to deliver on commitments made during a meeting with Mr. Mnangagwa earlier this year. He said he had spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin about cooperating with Zimbabwe and other African states and had secured his total commitment to this cooperation. Zimbabwe was also opening its embassy in Belarus and would appoint an ambassador within the next few months. The 2023 election cycle just concluded has confirmed that some of Nigeria's deep fault lines haven't disappeared after all, and that Nigeria's new leaders must make conscious efforts to reverse the trend. And that's according to Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka. Speaking in his first television interview since the election took place, Professor Soyinka says democracy can only be strengthened when leaders take deliberate steps to positively affect the society.
Certain stakes have been catapulted to the fore and have come to overwhelm what should be the real stuffing of the democratic process. I'll give you an example. In fact, one of the reasons why I refuse to endorse any candidate or be seen, forget what people put in my mouth, is that as far as I was concerned, none of the candidates for me actually addressed things which were closest to my heart. Like, again, reconstructing the nation. But I didn't really see any genuine commitment, any believable agenda about, quote-unquote, restructuring, decentralization, which is at the heart for me of Nigeria's problem at the moment. People were more concerned, in my view, with just aiming for power. Now, it's not all about reconstruction. There's also the redressing of history to close the circle of negativities that we have embarked upon just before and including the Civil War. I happen to believe, for instance, that the presidency, as soon as possible, should go towards the eastern region, which lost a war. That this is one of the ways to heal the wounds of the nature. That democracy is actually linked up, with issues beyond the immediate. It's linked up also with history. How did we get here? Is this where we want to be? How do we get out of it? What are the various prospects? And you strengthen democracy by using democratic means of making changes to arrive at your vision of society, which is what I've always done, what I've always believed in. And when I encounter a situation where the ethnic issue, which is permanently there,
and came to fore a lot during this election,
or the religious issue becomes paramount, rather than a holistic look at history and a commitment to change within society, then I come close to really thinking with you that maybe what you just said was right, that maybe our people have not really, penetrated through to the intricacies of democracy, to the principles, to the imperatives in a total comprehensive manner.
Elsewhere, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has left Ghana for Tanzania, but before she left, she made a case for women empowerment. She challenged Africans to step up innovation and help women play their full part in the future of the world. She spoke to thousands of young Ghanaians in Accra, the state capital.
Standing in front of Black Star Gate, a monument built on the site where Ghana declared independence from Britain in 1957, Kamala Harris underlined deep gender disparities in Africa.
On the continent of Africa, we know women grow a majority of the food, yet they are less likely to own the land they farm. They represent a majority of frontline healthcare workers, but face disparities in health outcomes.
To chairs, she said innovation and the empowerment of women would be key to Africa's future success.
Let us take a moment to imagine the future. A future where women are not just included, but also lead. Imagine a future where every person is connected to the digital economy, a future where every young person trusts that their voices are heard, a future that is propelled by African innovation.
Vice President Harris added that the United States would work with Africa to strengthen partnerships based on openness, inclusiveness, candor, shared interests, and mutual benefits. She also acknowledged the importance of remembering the two continents' intertwined history, some of which is painful and some of which is prideful, and added that Africa has a special significance for her personally as the first black vice president of the United States. Her visit to Ghana, the first stop on an African tour that will also take her to Tanzania and Zambia, is part of a charm offensive by Washington as it seeks to counterbalance the growing influence of China and Russia on the continent.
And children at a school in Zwara in northwestern Libya are learning the language of a once oppressed community. 12 years ago, under Muammar Gaddafi, the Amazigh community was condemned to a clandestine orality. But since Gaddafi's death in 2011, things have changed. Also on air since 2012, Cassis FM is the first local radio station in Tamazight language broadcasting in Zwar. About 10% of Libyans are Amazigh, a large indigenous population of the whole of North Africa, which was present long before the Greek, Roman, and then Arab conquests in the 7th century. Well, that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.